Hello everyone and welcome. Yes, my name is Arafire and welcome back to another episode of Look Out and Shout, where at long last we are reviewing X-Transbots Double Agent 26A, American version, USA version, Bond James. This is their take on an American release of Punch Counterpunch, which comes with a typical X-Transbots box with a signature motto on the side which reads, "Don't mention your move before you make a move." Thinking ahead there. The box itself is very nice. The artwork of both robot modes, yes, both, not a triple changer. For those of you who don't know, there is two versions to Punch or Counterpunch, as he is a double agent and always was. That is his deal, that he is an Autobot working for the Decepticons, and Decepticons working for the Autobots. We never really know, do we? But he has two modes, and then two robot modes, I should say, and then one alt mode. On the back of the box, we get the standard tech specs, as well as some nice artwork of their other releases. Inside the box comes with the instructions, as well as the standard collector's card, and also some accessories in the bag, which we'll go into in a minute. I do want to say a quick shout out to ShowZ store for sending me this figure. Really appreciate the ongoing support you guys have shown me. You too can pick up this figure, and I will put a link in the description below taking you there. Do not forget, as always, if you can, to please enter support your favourite reviewer code on the top of the homepage, FIRE1, FYRE1, before making pre-orders or completing your purchases. It's been a great success so far since the code has started. Really do appreciate your help. Keep going forward with your support. Thanks very much. Here he is in his robot punch mode, Bond or James, depending which one you want to call it. As he came out of the box in his vehicle mode, I had to transform him up first. It wasn't the worst transformation I've come across with X-Transbots, but there are some elements that could have been better. So what you can't see is within the feet, what makes up the side panels, the base of the side panels of the vehicle mode, actually is just a thin layer of plastic that you have to detach. The thing is, if you went off script, if you tried to do this without the instructions, you could easily snap it. You could easily break it. And the thing I'm thinking of with this, that could have been improved. There's a bit of under-engineering in some aspects here, but there's also a case of over-engineering in regards to the feet, and I'll get to that in a minute. The bit that folds up into the legs, if you liken it to an actual sports car or even any old car, the base of the car has to be strong, particularly with something like a convertible where you haven't got a roof to maintain the stability. So when you're transforming this, when you transform it and take the hood off, the only thing holding the structure of the vehicle together is these two flimsy bits of plastic. Likewise, in a road car, if you've got the engine and the transmission being the weight, the base of the car has to be made out of a strong sense of steel or titanium, perhaps. It has to be a strong material to take that kind of weight. Much the same with this. It needed to be a stronger die cast, maybe. Even just to say, if you're going to detach it, it's not going to bend and break. And it was very easy to do that here. Not that mine broke, but it could very easily happen. Feet as well were a little bit awkward transforming them up. The instructions only helped to a point. In the end, I watched a video by TM Reviews who gave a fairly good instruction to how to do the feet, but they're awkward. It's a sense of under-engineering for those side supports from the vehicle mode that I just mentioned, but over-engineering when it comes to the feet. But that being said, otherwise, it's not too bad. The compounding of the chest and expanding of the orange here and attaching the back panel in, that's quite good. The arm transformation is fair. Tolerances aren't too bad. I had no breakages. The feet sections, particularly around the heels, did pop off, but they could pop back on as well. So I was careful though. I did go careful with it because you could see if you push things too hard, tolerances would have been an issue. You would see stress marks coming. Not that I did, but I knew if I kept going any harder, stress marks would appear. Let's get in for a closer look. So I just love how he looks with that gold chest. It's not the most absolute perfect rendition of him. I would have liked the chest to have been a more orangey colour, that maybe the Rebirth cartoon would have had. You can obviously see around the back it's just him again. And shock horror, when we get to the transformation of that, it's not going to look a lot different. I have got some paint QC, which is a bit annoying. Just small things. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. There's a tiny speck of blue there on the otherwise yellow, and of course that will show up quite a bit. And there's a bit round on his reverse face, smudging on the top of his goatee bit, I suppose. Just a couple of things here and there that aren't perfect, but I like how he looks in terms of proportion. Everything else is well structured, well built. Articulation wise, you've got to be a little careful. I will say that stuff will come untabbed a little bit. He's got a bit of an ab crunch on the go. Head can look up that much. Head can look down that much, side by side. The head will also detach for a replacement head and face sculpt. Shoulder up is okay, but maybe not the sturdiest joint. Double elbow, but again it comes untabbed. You can see there for the transformation. But you will get a slightly stiffer one to get a bend all the way around. There you go. But it will go. Same with the wrist. The wrist can easily come up as well. It's fine, but it could have been better. Waist rotation, pretty good. Lack of ratchets for the hips, or anything really for the hips. Side panel comes up. It's a heavy friction. And it will take the weight. Do get ratchet forward. I would have liked ratchet out as well. Good bend at the knee. Rotation back. No particular. That's it for an ankle tilt. But honestly, I'm concerned about untabbing it, and it was hard enough getting it all in to begin with. So overall, not bad. Just some things could have been a bit better. I will say, of course, that I think I've got him transformed up in full punch mode. I wouldn't be at all surprised if I've got some counterpunch features mixed in here. I think the hands are right. I don't think the hands belong with counterpunch. I could be wrong. I'm doing this based off memory. Accessory wise, he comes with his gun, which is your standard open out peg. Hands are a little bit on the stiff side. Doing his best 007 impression. Now, of the head, I prefer the one that he has, but he also comes with a completely alternative head for punch and counterpunch. Slight differences between the two, much more placid face, a lighter blue visor, and more pointier ears, radio antenna ears. Counterpunch maybe looking a bit Secrets and Lies 1984, bit comic style, slightly wider goatee, but not too much in differences. Also comes with a shouty visor, more blue, typical visor that would sit in that head sculpt there. So, to do the change, the head simply pops off. I mean, he was in a rebirth, so I suppose he is a headmaster. Lift up the top of the head, as such, which then the face will come off eventually. What you would do is you'd lift up and you would put it off, but it's on a very, very tight peg, and I've yet to be able to get it off. But that's how you would do it. I'll have to put some separate photos up of that. But also, whilst I'm here, what is quite a telling one, and this will come into when we get into counterpunch mode, so you don't have his face sitting around on the back. You can again flip up, rotate round and close down. Okay, you got that to look at, but at least it somewhat completes the image, that you won't have two faces to be looked at. Okay, now on to some comparisons. Here he is alongside Takara Masterpiece Hot Rod, kind of keeping it in a rebirth as it were. Different scale ranges and certainly different builds. It's hard to say whether this is different scale ranges. When you compare against some of the other bigger Masterpiece, which we'll get to in a minute, you can really see the difference. But this scale Masterpiece, Carbot Masterpiece in bot mode, seems to work. Fans Toys Jabba, again keeping it rebirth. Slightly bigger, but Blur was never the smallest bot, so that possibly works. Now you see what I mean when I'm talking about scale ranges. Here he is alongside Fans Toys Lupus, their version of Weird Wolf. It's very, very big. You can't really put these two side by side. Maybe this is screen accurate. Punch Counter Punch was never that tall, I suppose. But if we're to call this Masterpiece grade, this is where I feel the Carbot size is kind of outdated now. But it's used a lot as a standard bearer for Masterpiece figures, generic Masterpiece figures, particularly the ones that just turn into cars or just normal vehicles. But comparing it against true Masterpiece size, 9-10 inch figures, yeah, he comes up quite a bit short. And you see what I mean about the sort of outdated scale. Here he is alongside Make Toys Downbeat, their version of Jazz, for that masterpiece car bot into robot mode size. It's taller than Jazz. I don't know if I'd agree with that. Maybe Make Toys is a tiny bit on the small side, but yeah, scale with existing figures could be a bit of a holding back issue with this one. But this scale works quite well. Here he is alongside Takara MP44 Optimus Prime. Prime was always a big bot, so that probably is right, and we see these two communicate, certainly in the Secrets and Lies comic that came out, and we get a brief interaction in the Rebirth series as well. Okay, let's turn him up into Counterpunch mode for a little spying of his own. And I'm led to believe that's it. That's him transformed up. Really shock horror, just like the original toy, he just turns around. You flip the arms bending backwards, that double elbow acting as a double elbow, I suppose. He doesn't rotate. It more or less is what it is. So I would have liked maybe a bit more of an involvement getting him from one step to the other than just turning him around. But I will say, those red alloy wheels, they reflect and they actually bring a fair bit of life to the character. Otherwise, if they weren't there, it would just be solid blue and arguably a bit dull. So I'm quite glad that they're there just to give a bit of reflectiveness. But you can see if I turn him around, the ankles are facing the same way. I flipped the face around, but it's pretty much where we left off. So yeah, you obviously flip the shoulder pads around. He's got some nice big 80s shoulder jacket on the go. But yeah, it's much the same figure. The ankles are facing a different way, so you, if anything, have different sets of ankles. Stability's fine, all articulation is the same. Not too much to shout about different, but that's how he looks. Comes with his different gun in this one. Yeah, it's pretty fine. It's a black gun, different gun. Pegs him arguably better than the first one did on the punch side. So yeah, not an awful lot difference. And he does look a bit menacing in this mode, though, I will say that. I don't know if you can see because his face is so dark, but it's more of a changeable head sculpt than a face plate on this one. And if I try and get the new one up side by side, I don't know if that will show you an awful lot, but you can see it's much more of a curved mouthpiece, a higher mouthpiece. It's again fractionally bigger on the goatee than not. Pointier antennas versus more square ones. I don't have any real preference. I'd say this looks the more sinister of the two. And there he is with it on, if you can see it. Yeah, that's definitely the more sinister looking of the two, just because of a higher face, maybe, higher eye visor. It certainly has a much more of a menacing look to it. Okay, on to some Counterpunch comparisons. Completely different scale range, but same kind of era. Here he is alongside Titan's Return Misfire. They shared the same series, of course, but that's about as far as the comparisons go. Here he is alongside Fans Toys Sovereign, their Galvatron. Now, of course, shared the Rebirth series, but we never saw these two on screen at the same time. Really, the only ones that we did see on screen at the same time were Wingspan and Pounce, which I don't have. So that gives you an idea, again, of the masterpiece scale that he arguably doesn't fit into. And here he is in his vehicle mode, and that looks very nice. X-Transbots are going through a nice spell at the moment of designing good alt modes, good car modes. This is no exception to that. So he's obviously based on a Pontiac Fiero, very much an 80s car that I always associate with that Miami Vice chalky off-white colour, but he's in the blue of Punch Counterpunch here. But it looks really nice. The red alloys really pop. They're very reflective. The detailing around the back with the lights as well. It's just a very good car. I'm not too sold on the blacked windscreen. I would have liked that maybe a reflective colour. I'm sure you can get some Toy Hat stickers for it. But overall, this could just be a model car and that would be fine. It's a very good shape, very square, very built as well. It's tabbed together very well, but this is how it comes out the box as well. Good ground clearance, rubber tyres. Overall, X-Transbots seem to have got their craft for vehicle modes down at the very least. Let's get in for a closer look. It's a good size. It's very, very square. I love the reflectiveness of the red on the alloy wheels. Wing mirrors on there are plastic. Nice detailing around the back with the lights. They are stickers, maybe slightly misaligned there on that one, which is a shame. Exhaust on there as well. There's his face on the underside. Hello. Rubber tyres with tyre treads on them. That's a nice feature. And of course a little detailing, or really a sculpt mark of a fuel cap. And perhaps the nicest feature, true to the car itself, you can flip up the headlights for that very 80s sports car vibe. I've always loved these on cars back in the day as well. So actually getting a vehicle mode with them on, again, this could just be a model car. It's very cool. There's also this part here. Now, I believe this you could put an Autobot insignia on should you choose, but it's on a rotating bit that you could then flip around, and then you could have a Decepticon insignia on the other side. Very Jetfire-like in that regard, or Skyfire. So yeah, very cool. Do like it. Paint is coming through very nice. Maybe easy to misalign the front bonnet, front hood. But overall, very nice. Okay, on to some comparisons. Here he is alongside another X-Transbot offering. Here he is with their version of Drag Strip, repainted into the Tyrrell Formula 1 colours that I've got. No surprise here. It's made by the same company. The blue is very similar, that reflective, although the Tyrrell has much more of a sparkly blue to it. But you can see similar shade of colouring, similar use all round. No real surprise then. An ever so slightly smaller scale, here he is alongside Generation Toys' version of Dead End in the IDW more modernised scheme of things. It's more or less the same comparison, but you can see what I mean by the slightly stockier build that they've used for you can see what I mean around a slightly stockier build that they've used. Kara Masterpiece Bumblebee, very small comparison here, quite different scale ranges, but these two never really shared the same screen because Bumblebee went into Goldbug at this point. But this is what they look like side by side. This is a Takara offering. And Takara Masterpiece Sunstreaker in a typical Masterpiece car scale. Again, you can see what I mean. He's just that shade bigger. Not a lot in it, but just that little bit bigger. Now, I will say, of the two weapons that he comes with, I haven't found anywhere to store them. So here they are. And I don't think there's anywhere on him that you can plug them in. I haven't come across any particular gap that you could plug them into meaningfully. That said, I will probably look at that in a bit more detail and see if there is anywhere, but there's nothing obvious at the... And what is becoming a very common feature now is you can actually open the doors, which is, yeah, cool. It's a nice little feature. Nothing really to see inside other than invisible hand syndrome. There's nothing really made up there, no cockpit, no steering wheel. But he can open the doors quite wide, as if he's just gone to the shops and popped out to get some milk. So what are my final views on Double OX? Well, it's better than some of the other X-Transbots releases. It is one that I was wary of, but one I was very careful of when I took it out of the box, particularly when it came to transformation. But one I was cautious of, but I wanted to take a punt on it. I wanted to say, all right, no one else is really having a go at Punch Counterpunch. This is probably, the third toy we've had on the market since release, maybe fourth. I can't think. That's including mainline and third party. It's a character not well done, so I'm glad X-Transbots are taking a stab at it. They are going for the more obscure bots. I thought the vehicle mode looked very nice, and getting it out of the box as it came in alt mode looked very good. It was a very good car. If you wanted to keep it in that mode, it rolls nicely, good ground clearance. And getting it transformed up into robot mode, whilst you had to be careful. Once you get it there, it's very nice. The sculpting is good, the proportions are very good, the detail on the face I like, particularly in this mode. But tolerances concern me a little bit because some things are a bit floppy by comparison. The tolerances on the elbow are a little bit loose. You can easily untransform it at the wrist. Again, the shoulders can get to a point and then you almost have to hold back the chest and the back of the figure to get a full shoulder rotation. It will go, but then it wants to unpeg the top. So it's just little things. The friction going out at the side, that's stiff to the point that it breaks. I'm not really a fan of that. I like to ratchet forward and back. Die casting the thighs is a welcome feature. The ankles are a little bit of a mess. I'm not a fan of them, but that was more getting them into that mode than them posing themselves. There is a tilt. I'm just not super keen on them. I don't think they're strong enough. I do think some parts of the figure are a little bit flimsy. As I said, parts that hold the structure of the car mode that you have to transform getting it into robot mode, the side panels, they're very thin, they're very flimsy, and if you go at it wrong, they will snap, and it's quite an integral part of the alt mode. But it's by no means a disaster. It's better than I thought, and I do like it. I think another issue with it is how it scales. As I went through with the comparisons, I feel that this is going to struggle to fit into most people's collection. I think it's going to struggle to fit in mine. I'm glad I've got it, but you have to put it against the likes of Masterpiece Carbots for it to stand a chance. If you put it with some of the bigger Fans Toys offerings, for example, if you wanted to really go Rebirth series, then I think you're going to struggle. He's going to look so small by comparison. Okay, he wasn't the biggest, but it looks quite dwarfed. And I think that is a bit of a shame. But the figure itself, being X-Transbots and how they can get a rough ride, I've certainly given them a rough ride. I think this one's okay. And I said when I did my breakdown of the reveals from TFCon in Orlando in a video recently, they were very quick to show repaints of this mould, and this has barely been out there. There has been reports of QC issues with this. And I thought if they're very quickly showing what other repaints they can do in more sporting motorsport liveries, then they were obviously quite keen on this mould. They felt it could go down well. And it's to say that it's actually all right. It's not their worst. There was a few things I wish they would have done better, but it's by no means a disaster. It's probably the best counterpunch on the market, but there is slim pickings out there. So I'm glad I've got it. And yeah, I just feel like if this is where they're going to go with some of their obscure figures now, then okay, let's see what else they can do. But please, X-Transbots, work on your tolerances. That's what I'll say. Like things, if you want to get them in poses, it will get them into poses, but you run a risk of untransforming stuff. The transformation wasn't terrible. As I say, there is a case of under-engineering and over-engineering. Please, X-Transbots, work it out, because if you keep going, you will get an almost flawless figure, but you're not there yet. I will say it is a bit awkward getting this other face sculpt in. I still haven't worked out how to do it, so I'm going to have to do my best on that and stick a photo up on Instagram. The instructions too were a little bit hit and miss, and I ended up resulting to videos online. I would suggest you do the same. But based on this, I give this figure 3.5 for the star badges. I think that's fair, really, considering how X-Transbots can be buried, if you like, by some reviewers, myself included. This isn't terrible. This actually does a lot of good, but it does have some flaws that I think should be ironed out for future releases to come. We have seen their run amok, run about figures coming out, so I'm hoping, as they should probably follow much of a similar structure to this, given that they're the same height, that those tolerances will be improved for those figures. But we'll see what comes. And there we go. That is my review of X-Transbots 26A USA version Bond James. Their version of a punch counterpunch. I'll stick some photos up at the end. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you on the next one.